Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 to 7, the burning bush. Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led his flock beyond the wilderness and came to Mount Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of a bush. He looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it wasn't consumed. Then Moses said, I must turn aside and look at this great sight and see why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Come no closer. Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. He said further, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. And then the Lord said, I have observed the misery of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry on account of their taskmasters. Indeed, I know their sufferings. This is the word of the Lord.
Familiar story? The burning bush? Yeah. I guess for people who've been through Sunday school and stuff like that, it's a pretty familiar story. It is the call of Moses. And we have Moses who, previous to this part of the story, had been in Egypt and got really angry with the way things were, with the way the Israelites were being treated in Egypt, angry to the point where he actually killed one of the taskmasters. And of course, then he had a penalty of death on him, so he ran away. And instead of being in Egypt, and I don't know how he made such an easy transition, never quite get that explanation, but he ends up looking after his father-in-law's sheep, as one does. And while he was there tending the sheep, he has this vision, you could say. What happens is he's minding his own business, tending the sheep, and a bush seemingly bursts into flame, but it's not consumed. There's been all sorts of scientific theories about how that can possibly happen. There's bushes apparently in the Middle East that look like they are on fire at certain times of the year and certain lights. But I think you miss the point if you try and go there. And out of the midst of the bush comes a voice calling Moses and saying, Moses, and telling Moses that this is God, you know, God speaking out of this bush. And he says, take your shoes off because you're standing on holy ground. Which might have seemed strange to Moses. What do you equate with holy ground? Where would you find holy ground? The earth, that's my answer. But if you weren't, if you didn't know that it was, an Earth Day service, and you might think it was, a cathedral or a synagogue or a mosque. That's obvious holy ground. Not a place in the middle of the wilderness with sheep dung all around the ground and dust, no doubt. But what makes it a holy ground is that it's a place where God's presence is revealed, I think. And what happens is that Moses is told by God to go back into Egypt and to give a message of liberation to the people, not only the people of Israel, but the people of Egypt, and to free God's people. And Moses is a little bit anxious that if he goes back and just says, "Hey guys, I've been in the middle of I've been out in the outback, and a bush has burned into flame, and it told me to come back here," they may not take me seriously. So God says, "Well, tell them I am sent you." Remember that? I am sent you. And there's been a heck of a lot of sermons around that bit too. What on earth does God mean to say I am? The important part of it is that that credential, that sort of that when that Moses did tell the leaders of the Israelites and others that was who sent him, it was taken as that it was God. So there was a sense of identity about that. What matters to me in this story, what brings it alive, is all the symbols in it. It's a story full of symbols. What are the symbols? What are the things in this story that stand out to you? Yeah, there's an obvious one. Wouldn't be a story about a burning bush if there wasn't a burning bush.
Light.
Light, yeah, that's good. Yeah, exactly. The sheep, yeah. Sort of observers, passive observers, I guess you'd say. Yeah. What else?
Taking off your shoes.
Yeah, I think taking off your shoes is at the core of this story too. The sense of Moses being told this is a special place, special time. Take that in. And I think I led a service out there in the garden quite a few months ago, last year, when it was nice enough weather, fortunately. It might have been spring. And part of the service was I invited you to take off your shoes so that you could feel the grass. And if you've ever done that, that you are in a different sort of connection with the earth. So yeah, taking off your shoes. So what else? The voice, yeah, coming out of the voice of God, and that sense of mystery about that. These aren't trick questions, I'm really.
Moses wants to go near, he's not demonstrating for reference, he's obviously searching.
Yeah, that's right. So Moses is a sort of symbol in himself, isn't he? He's the searcher. He's the one who is seeking something. Or maybe he's not. Maybe he's the sought one. I think you've taken my whole list there and added a few more. I actually had ground as one of the symbols too, that sense of sacred ground, which is very much tied in with the shoes. So what I want to draw out of it today is that God can and does designate any place as holy ground. The places where we have sacred encounters can be anywhere God is. This week, and I guess it's easy for us to see as sacred ground a church, even our backyard, maybe our garden. But this week, we've seen pictures of desecration again in Gaza, seen floods in Dubai, and many other places that are, in essence, sacred ground. And we've watched as people risk their own safety to save lives or recover the dead, to bring food and water, and to bring hope. And as we watch these scenes of pain, we recognise that God is present with the suffering. Indeed, that God suffers alongside them. You could add refugee camps to that list, I would guess, too. Yep, because the ground of Gaza, the ground of Dubai, that ground is holy. It's holy because not only the suffering that's taken place there, it's holy because it will take a long time to get back to any sense of normalcy. It's holy because we see God there. And this ground that we garden on and worship in on occasion, this place that we're at now is holy. and a place where God calls us to listen to the voice of justice, of compassion, and of hope. On Earth Day, we take into our hearts that the holy ground of God is not being cared for in a way that's anywhere near sustainable, and that we need to act to change our ways to care for the earth. And on this day of our annual general meeting, we note that we worship and work and do all that we do, make plans on sacred ground, on ground that's holy because God is here. I want to finish short reflection with a poem by Mary Oliver, which is a poem asking for forgiveness, but it's also about being rooted in the earth and the holiness of the earth. She says, "Angels are wonderful, but they are so well aloof. It's what I sense in the mud and the roots of the trees, or the well, or the barn, or the rock with its citron map of lichen that halts my feet and makes my eyes flare, feeling the presence of some spirit, some small God who abides there. If I were a perfect person, I would be bowing continuously. I'm not, though I pause wherever I feel this holiness, which is why I'm so often late coming back from wherever I went. Forgive me." It's almost a prayer, isn't it? Amen. I've changed the